Okay, good evening. Tonight we're going to be learning Maseches Chullin Daf Samach Beis and a little bit of Samach Gimel Amud Aleph. We're going to jump ahead just a little, also because Samach Gimel is a little bit of a bigger blot, and I just want to kind of even things out. And I also don't know timing-wise what's going to happen tomorrow. I might end up just recording. I'll see what Rabbi Handler's schedule is. Let us start. We're on the bottom of Samach Aleph Amud Beis, the last three words. Of course, we're in the middle of the sugya of the 24 birds that are listed in Chumash. And these 24 birds we know are tameh. And minus a couple of exceptions, we really don't have a list of kosher birds. So yesterday we were trying to figure out of the simonei kashrus, of which there are four. There's a bell curve. At one strong extreme, you have the nesher that has none of the simonei kashrus. Pashat, that's a tameh bird. On the other side, you have a kosher bird like the torin. Those birds, the turtle doves, the doves, whatever, the birds we eat, chickens, they have all of the simonei kashrus. Yesterday we debated what would be kosher and what would not be kosher. And right there is where we're picking up on a qualification by Rav Nachman. Amar Rav Nachman, Haya baki bahenu b'shvosein. If you knew about all of the bird types of the 24, so then ov haba b'siman echad tahor, then you'd be fine, because even if you had an animal that had only one siman, like the paris and the oznia, but if you knew the 24, then you knew the one wasn't the paris for oznia, you knew that it would be kosher. But lo haya baki bahenu b'shvosein, if you weren't a baki in the 24 and in the names of the 24, then b'siman echad tameh, because it might be then confused with the Paris and the Osnia. And Bishnei Simanin Tahor, but had it been that there were two Simanei Kashrus, then they would be kosher. However, that's only true Behusha Yakir Orev. That's only true if you were a specialist in regards to what a raven looked like. And that's because a raven was the only of the 24 birds that had only two simanim. So if you had a bird that had two simanim and it wasn't the orev, then you knew by process of elimination, goodbye, the animal, it's not an orev, it's kosher. So then we're good to go. That's what the Gemara says. Orev v'sulo, is orev really the only animal that has two simanei kashrus? That can't be. After all, I'll show you from a brisa that there's more than one bird that has two simanei kashrus. It's not just the orev. Tanya, the pasuk says, orev. It's actually one of the shortest psukim in Chumash. Ace kol orev lemino. Pasuk in Vayikra Yud. So we see the word orev. Ze orev. What does lemino mean? Rebbe Lazar Omer lohavi es hazarzir. There's another animal out there that is two simanim. You wanted to try to say, Rav Nachman, that if you have an animal that has two simanim and it isn't an orev, then it's kasher. Mechatesi. Maybe it's the zarzir. Amrlo, they push back on Rabbi Eliezer in the Brisa. Amrlo, the Rabbi Eliezer, no. V'halo anshe kfar tmarta shabi Yehuda hayu ochlin osam mipnei yesh lahen zefek, because they ate this zarzir because it actually had a zefek, which is a siman kashrus. Chickens have a zefek. The birds that we eat have a zefek by and large. I don't know if I don't know I would know no distinctions between pigeons and doves and chickens and ducks. I don't know. I presume they all have all four simanei kashrus. I don't know. Does anybody know? I have no idea. Okay. So says the Gemara, what do we see? No, Rabbi Eliezer, you're wrong. The zarzir and the orev are not the same. And how do we know they're not the same? Because Amar Lahem, Rabbi Eliezer says back to them, Af hein asidin litein es hadin. They should not be eating the zarzir. The zarzir and the orev are one and the same. Davar acher, another drasha, lemino, should say lemino because it's quoting the pasuk. Lemino doesn't mean like Rabbi Lazar said about the zarzir, but rather lehavi sinunis levana. We're going to learn more about this animal. It was a type of bird that had white or perhaps a light color on it, as we will soon see. So Amrulo, how can you say that the orev and the sinunis levana are the same? V'halo anshek lil ha'elyon ochlin osami meshekor kiban niklav. You want to tell me that the Snunis Levana is the same din as an Orev? That's not true. Because in the Galil Elyon, they ate these animals. Why? What was the telltale sign that they were allowed? Says the Gemara that Kurkibano Niklaf, that their Kurkavan, their gizzard, the sheath that was on top was peelable. And as we know from the very top of yesterday's blot of Samech Aleph Amud Aleph, that is one of the four Simane Kashrus. Amar Lahen, here too, Rabbi Eliezer said, Af hein asidin litain es hadin. You are not allowed to do that. It is usher to eat. So therefore, the Gemara points out, we've brought two proofs now, and Rabbi Eliezer, either in the initial version or in the Davar Acher version, it's still Rabbi Eliezer pushing against the Havamina, These animals are one and the same. We have no way to distinguish because you're asi litenes hadin. So if you're asi litenes hadin, so the problem there then would be that now we have two birds who have shnei simanei kashrus. And if you have two birds who have shnei simanei kashrus, it's a kasha and Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman wanted to say that if there are two simanim, as long as you know what the orev is, you're good to go, because by definition, the bird you're eating is not simanei, is not going to be an orev. That's not true. Ella says the Gemara, you're right. I didn't mean only the orev. Ella orev v'chol min orev. You need to know all of the species within the camp of orev, and then you're allowed. So if I know, let's say there's 12 of them. So I know all 12 well, and I have a different bird, nacha bird, but he doesn't have the features of an orev, and he has two simanei kashrus, then the animal's kosher. So orev v'chol mine orev are going to be aser if there are two simanei kashrus. But if I have a bird that isn't one of the many species of orev and it has two simanei kashrus, the bird's going to be kosher. That is what our Gemara says so far. Third of the way down, Amar Meimar, Dad, Dr. Karesh, this Gemara is for you, because yesterday you made this comment. Amar Meimar Hilchasa, Of haba b'simin echad tahor. If a bird has even one simin kashrus, the animal's kasher, v'hu delo daris, provided that it doesn't stand on the animal that it eats with a talon in the animal and eat the animal that way. The Mefarshim here explain, Rashi, look at Rashi right next to us, skip halfway through the Rashi, the nearly, shekol of hanosein raglo al ha'ochel, any animal that stands on its prey, shehu ochlo, when it eats it, umachziko biraglo, and he holds the animal that he's eating from stable with his foot, shelo yanut, so that it doesn't move, the lo yanatel kulo etzel piv, so that when he picks up the animal with his beak, he doesn't pick up the whole animal, only little strips of flesh, etzel piv, hu drisa. Which we're going to speak about in a minute, that animal, that's another type of orib. Anyways, to your point, Dad, it's a little bit different than what you said, but a similar idea. Animals that have the big talons, they stand on top of their prey. Those are the animals, and this is actually, if you look, it's quoted in the Rambam and in Hilchos Shchita. Supposedly, I learned this a bunch of years ago, but I don't remember any of it. But that's what the Gemara says, that if the predatorial bird is dores, if it stands on its prey with its paws, with its, not paws, with its talons, then it's going to be a treifa, even if it has a siman kashrus. Amrli Ravashi l'Ramemar, ha de Rav Nachman mai. Ravashi says to Ameimar, because if you'll recall, what did Ameimar just say? That one siman is kasher, provided that it's not dores. Ravashi says to Ameimar, Rav Nachman didn't give the condition of drisa. Rav Nachman, if you look at the bottom where we started today, Amar Rav Nachman, what did he say? If you know the animals, then you know the animals. If you don't, you don't. Rav Nachman said nothing about this feature of the talon and holding on to the meat, Rashi's description. No, nothing. So Ameimar, tell me, why didn't you hold of Rav Nachman? Amar lei, lo shmieli. I never heard of it. And says the Gemara that whenever we see the phrase lo shmieli, that's not what it means. Really, it's a respectful form of saying klomar lo sviruli. I don't hold with what he says. So now we actually have a machlokes in psak. The Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch do seem to paskin like Ameimar, but Rav Nachman and Ameimar don't agree. Good. My Ika, says the Gemara, what is the deal in regards to this shita of Rav Nachman, that he says that if you only have one, then it's going to be tahor mishum peres v'oznia? You're worried about the case of peres v'oznia, and of course you'd have to be a bird watcher to know this. Less than who be yishuv. I don't have to worry. I don't have to know my animals. The peres and oznia, I'm going to make this up, live in Africa and only under the rain canopy. I don't know what I'm talking about. They don't live here. Do we have to worry about bald eagles in Chicago? I've actually seen eagles in Chicago. It's extremely rare. There was an eagle in front of my house on a tree holding a dead squirrel in its right paw. And I'm telling you, every bird, every squirrel in the neighborhood knew what was going on. They were scattering. It was crazy. They knew exactly what was happening. That's very rare. Do we see falcons? Do we see ravens? Do we see vultures? We just don't see most of those birds by us. So then says the Gemara, therefore I don't have to worry about this being a peres or an oznia. It's not lamaisa. If animals don't live in our climate, it's a very interesting psak, because we're trying to paskin that it's... What? I did. Yeah. So by eagles, for sure, right? For sure. By the way, the nesher is the worst one, assuming that an eagle is a nesher. Yeah, that's the worst one. But if there is one siman kashrus, so then do I have to assume it's a paris and oznia? Not if the animal doesn't live here, because that is less than yishuv. They are not regular animals here. It's just unique in halacha because we don't normally do this. Normally, what we would say is, what are the four simane kashrus? Create a threshold for me, and I'll hold the line. No problem. But here, what you're saying to me, well, it depends if this is their habitat. I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess it's true. There are some birds that only like the cold. So there's some birds that like the hot. There's some birds that like the middle. I see a few cardinals a year. I don't see a lot of cardinals. When we were growing up on Estes, we saw them every year. Every spring, we would see them. So cardinals wouldn't fall into this category. That animal is, I guess it's not kosher. I have no idea. They are kosher?
Unclear, but
They may not be worth their weight, but
yeah.
that is a different issue. Okay. Fascinating halachic Gemara is about how we toe the line in regards to bird kashrus. So different than animals of does it chew its cud? It's so technical. This is not technical. This is based on habitat. I think it's a very rare format of psak. Next, just about halfway down. Amar Rav Yehuda, ov hamisaret, a bird that scratches, kasher letaharas mitzora. We know that there are birds that are brought for the tahara process of a mitzora. If the bird is misaret, so then we are allowed to utilize that bird. Rashi, hamisaret, ishkartener, no idea what that means. But if you look on the sides, it says lisrot es haor, they scratch skin. I don't know what kind of birds these are. Of course, I should not, but I don't. But that's kasher for mitzora. And then says the Gemara, tying back into what we saw before, the Zohi Sinunis Levana. Remember, we saw above there were two versions of what the drasha of Lemino meant. Was Lemino to teach us about the Zarzir, or was Lemino there to teach us about the Sinunis Levana? So says the Gemara, the oaf that's misarit, that's kasher for the Taras and Mitzora, is the Sinunis Levana that we saw above. Shenachli Kubal Rabbi Eliezer v'Chachamim. The Rabbi Eliezer said that is mutter, and the Chachamim said absolutely not. And now we're going to analyze the Sinunis Levana. Amar Ameimar, b'chivra kreisa, if the belly of the Sinunis Levana is white, the stomach, kuleamalo pligi desharia, that type of bird, the Sinunis Levana with a white stomach, everyone agrees is mutter to eat, no problem. Kipligi b'de yeroka, when it is green, b'de yeroka kreisa. Now we know from Shas, specifically Maseches Sukkah, when discussing an esrog, that yarok in Shas often does not mean green. It means a shade of yellowish green or yellow. We saw this in the Bali Tosfos there in Sukkah. I believe we've seen this many times, probably 6-7 times. So this color does not mean green in the classical way. Now, if the stomach is this yellowish color, so then, Rebbe Lazar Asar, there he would say that the Sinunis Levana, who has a green stomach is Asar, a yellow stomach is Asar, the Rabbanan Sharu. Hilchasaka Rebbe Lazar, that the white one is kosher, the white stomach is kosher, the green one is not kosher, the yellow one is not kosher. Now, all of that is version 1 of what the stomach of this animal looked like. Marzutra Masni Hachi, Marzutra actually understood this in a different way. Bidi Yeroka Kresa, where the stomach is a little bit yellow, he flips the script. There is no machlokes where the stomach is yellow. Everyone agrees that's aser. Ki pligi bide chivra kresa, where the stomach is white. Rebbe Lazar aser v'rabbanan sharu v'hilchos rabbanan desharu. So we have, if we were to create a chart, you'd see these charts look very different. One, the first approach is that the machlokes is with the yellow stomach, and the white one is pashut mutter. The second one is the machlokes is with the white stomach, and the yellow one is pashut aser. No, different ways to. So now the Gemara is going to question one of these two versions, 6-7 lines from the bottom of Samach Beis Midal. I understand if you want to say the second version that they're fighting about whether or not the white stomach is kasher. Hainu de katani, skip the next two words, sinunis levana. We define the bird by its stomach color. Again, I'm not a bird watcher. I don't know if this is normal, but would we do that? I have no idea. They did. They clearly did. They felt that if you're going to say that the discussion is about the chiva kresa, that's why it's called the sinunis levana. Elulaman da amar b'di yeroka pligi. If we're talking about a bird that has a yellowish stomach, my sinunis levana, skip zohi. Why is it that we call it sinunis levana? It should have been called sinunis di yeroka. So says the Gemara, sometimes levana means white, and sometimes levana means not dark. Let's see what's going on here. Says the Gemara, When we say levana, what do we mean? Le'afuke debati, excluding domesticated birds of this type, de ukmasi, that are in fact dark. Oh, so now Yarok and Lavan are the same. So that's why this question that we just asked of, hey, it doesn't make sense to say that it's a chivra kresa if we're going to say that. I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense to say that b'diroka pligi if it's called Sununis Lavana. It says the Gemara, Lavana here doesn't mean white. It just means lighter colors, lighter shades. Good. Amar Rechava, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Tasil. Rashi, tasil min yonahu is a type of dove. So a tasil is a type of dove. So we know that for korbanos, the birds have to come at a certain age. Pasal mishum torin. If it's at the age of torin, which is older, an older bird, that will be pasal. The kosher mishum b'nei yona, it can only be at a younger age if the tasil is to be kosher. De'atzifi, a bird called de'atzifi, and Vitorin Shel Rechava, Rashi points out, this is the name of the birds. Kach Sheman, Rashi says. So we don't have to translate Shel Rechava of the width. No, the name of the bird was Torin Shel Rechava. Ksherin Mishum Torin, they're only kosher when they're older, like the Torin. Upsulin Mishum Bnei Yona, and they're pasal when they're younger. So, okay, good. Masiv Rab Daniel Bar Reb Ktina. We have a problem, and that's brought up in the Brisa, and this Brisa we saw in Maseches Gittin. Kol ha'ofos, turning to the top of Samach Beis Amud Beis, all birds are psulin b'meichatas. What does that mean that all birds are psulin in meichatas? Says Rashi, psulin b'meichatas im shasu mehen. Mipnei she'ein motzitzin, they don't actually drink through suction. Their lower beak will collect water, and then when they fly away, they'll turn their head back, and the water will fall down the esophagus. So says the Gemara, that's considered avoda to the mechatas, and it's a psul. You're not allowed to do avoda on the mechatas. If a bird drinks through mitzitza, just suction, he puts his beak in, somehow creates a seal, and brings water in through suction, that's not avoda. But if you're going to scoop out water with your lower beak and then fly away and then drink, then your scooping is considered an avoda pasels the mechatas. So says the Gemara, regular birds are psulim b'mechatas, chutz min yona, except for the yona. Why is the yona different? Because the yona doesn't scoop. What do? Chutz min hayona mipnei shemotzetzes. Because they don't scoop. They create some kind of seal in the water. Maybe they put their whole beak underwater. And if they're drinking from the mechatas and they suction in like a straw, good to go. That's not considered doing avoda to the mechatas, good to go. The im isa, and if you want to say Rashi fills in the gaps, fifth line, de tasil min yonahu. If you want to say that the tasil, the bird that we started talking about a few lines ago on the bottom of Samach Beis Amud Aleph, if that's really the min yona, then why didn't the Mishnah on the top of this line say, listening, chutz mi yona v'tasil? Elamai, it must be that the tasil and the bnei yona are not the same animal. Says the Gemara, Amar Reb Zera, it's a little different. Zeh, when we talk about the tasil, that's motzetz umeki. It does suction, but it also spits out a little bit. Meki means literally to throw up. We would call it backwash. It's not a good seal. So it drinks and some of it falls back in. And the Rishonim here are done. Is that a psul because saliva it can become pasul. If you're tamei, I did the unim here about the mechatas. But the point is that the tasil is in the same family as the bnei yona, but they drink water out of a reservoir differently. The tasil drinks and a little bit falls out of his mouth, but vizeh, the regular yona, is motzetz ve'eno meki. Therefore, the Gemara says there's a difference between a tasil and a yona. Both of them are in the family of yona, but the tasil doesn't have such a good seal, and therefore it pasels the mechatas. However, the yona does have a good seal, and it would not pasel the mechatas. Well, we're forced to, because on the top line of Samach Beis Amud Beis, it said that the only bird that doesn't pasel the mechatas by drinking from it is the yona.
You can't say that tasil is a kind of yona.
We can, but if we differentiate it on the bottom over here to say that tasil is one version of yona and yona is another version of yona, You're right that they're all similar species, but if the Gemara is going to say a tassil's different to some degree, then I should expect to see that reflected in this Mishnah from the Mechatas, but I don't. So the Gemara says, Elamai, there must be a difference in how they drink. It must be that the way the tassil drinks, there's some backwash, there's some saliva that comes out of his mouth. Masha Ein Kain, and I don't want to test this, but I have a feeling that all birds have backwash. I'm just saying, I don't know. But the Yonah seems to not have backwash. That's what it seems from the Gemara. At least not enough to ruin the Mechatas. Very interesting. All right, now let's talk about things that we don't understand. Amar Yehuda, Hani kufshani tsutsaini. These types of birds that are kufshani tsutsaini. Rashi, kufshani, torin, bilashon arami. They're torin. They're the birds we've been talking about. Tsutsaini, al shem mikoma. They're from tsutsaini. So kufshani is torin from tsutsaini. Ksherin legabe mizbeach. They are considered kosher. And vehein hein torin shel rechava. Remember, we said on the bottom of the page that there's a type of bird called Torin Sharachava. That was what we saw. It was paired with Atzifi. The Atzifi and Torin B'nai Sharachava, we said that they're only good if they're older. Those were two of the birds that we saw on the bottom. So it says the Gemara that the Kufshani, the Tzutzaini, are the same as Torin Sharachava. Meisvei, hold on 1 second. Are you telling me that it has an extra name? Ashem Levoy? Well, if that's true, then I'm going to bring precedent from another area of halacha where a bird that has two different names has a different status. Says the Gemara Meisve, we know the pasuk says Ezov. Let's read the pasuk inside. V'lokach hakohen eitz erez ve'ezov v'shnitzolas v'shlich el toch sreif ha'sapara. We take Ezov, which is literally translated as hyssop. Now, when we say Ezov, v'lo Ezov Yavan, not Greek Ezov, v'lo Ezov Kochli, not Ezov that's Kochli, v'lo Ezov Romi, not from Rome, v'lo Midbari, not wild, v'lo Kol Ezov, sheyesh lo shem levay. Regular, OG, generic Ezov. That's the only one you can bring. Don't bring me anything with a shem levay. What does that indicate to us? That only Ezov is kosher, but the shem levay Ezov is not kosher. So let's look back at our case. We just said Torin shel rechava, hein Torin shel rechava, that the Hufshani Tsutsaini is the same. Oh, isn't that a shame, Levi? So now you should say those are different. So Amar Abaye says we'll see a couple of answers here. It depends. Kol shenishtana shmo kodem matan Torah. If a bird had its name changed before matan Torah, Rashi says kigon ezov uvasa Torah v'ikpida kigon ezov shehiz karto Torah bekama mekomos v'lo nishmat lanu mikra lichtov ezov b'shem levai. Nowhere does it say ezov with an accompanying name. So shma mina kpedahu back in the Gemara. So if you have a name that was nishtana kodem matan Torah v'ikpida Torah love to only use that exact terminology, fine. Yeshem levai pasal. Then we would say that other type of ezov would be problematic. V'hani, but in our case, lo nishtanu shmon kodem matan Torah. But in our case, the Torah, they never had a name that was corrected or perfected before matan Torah. So all that answer distinguishes between the world of Ezov, where we are makbid, and kufshani tzutzaini and Torah shel rechava, which are one and the same, and it's not problematic. Rav Amar, I disagree. He says that it's not a shem levai, it's not another species, it's not anything. Hani kufshani tutzaini be'asraihu stama karilu. In its own locale, they actually call it stama, namely they call it torin. It's not a different bird, and they don't call it this way in other cases. You know, the way when I was listening to a shiur this morning, it said if you go to the museum, they'll give you like the species, the phylum, genus, they'll give you the fancy, whatever language, Latin name of the bird. No, it's a cardinal. So the Gemara says, Tsutsaini, Kufshani Tsutsaini. Nobody calls it that unless you're in the museum, unless you're in the aviary. Here, what is it called? A torin. They're called regular birds. He says, really, it's a fancy name. It's not the real name. Next, let's talk about grasshoppers. We were discussing this before. Amar Yehuda, Hani Karzi debei chilfi. These Karzi, which are grasshoppers, debei chilfi. So, debei chilfi, what does this mean? Rashi says, Ur ta'ush, and on the side it says min kotes tzemach bal se'aros zeiros hatzorbos es ha'ur, some type of growth from a particular place. So they live among these fibers or these growths. That's the type of grasshoppers. Sharu, mutter, high in protein. Udebei karvi, if they live among cabbage, asiri. And Amar Ravina, that the ones that are usher that live among cabbage, umalkinan alaihu mishum sheretz ha'of. Very interesting what's happening here. Why didn't you, what's Sheretz HaOf? Why didn't you put it with Shratzim? That's what the Gemara says, that it's Sheretz HaOf. Rashi, Umalkinan alayhim mishum Sheretz HaOf, the lav safek ninhu elavadai tmein.
Your question.
Doesn't answer the question. Okay. Ba'amar Yehuda, Tzreida Shari, that Tzreida is mutter, and Barda Asir, different types of birds. You want to see the most confusing Rashi ever? Tzreida, Barda. I have no idea what I'm just full transparency. I have no idea what Rashi is talking about because the Gemara paints the two animals as different. The Gemara says that the Tzreida is, I lost my place. Here we go. Tzreida is a bird that's mutter. Barda is a bird that's aser. V'simane, how do we know that which one's aser? Bar mine marda sveka. Okay, this little catchphrase that was common there, a colloquialism, that one's aser. But I don't understand Rashi. Anybody? I don't know. It's hard not to learn Iyun sometimes. Like you want to sit here and pore over this and look up the Pnei Yoshua, look up the other Rishonim. I just don't understand. And I know that I'm not understanding it correctly because Tosfos doesn't say anything. So it's obvious that his grandchildren didn't press on him. So I just, unless it's swallowed in one of these, in this lengthy Tosfos here. Next. Amar Rav Asi, Shmona Svekosein. There are 8 cases of birds that are a suffix. Chova, Chuga, Suga, the Harguna, Harnuga, the first 4. Tushlami, Umarda, Kochilna, Ubarnafcha, Umay Svekaihu. What is the suffix about all of these birds? Says the Gemara that Ophos Tahorin, generally speaking, Kur Kivanan Nikla. The gizzard of animals that are kosher, their gizzard can be peeled. Utmeyin ein kivornan niklav. We know this already from the top of Samach Aleph, Amin Aleph, from when we started learning about the Simane Ophos. Remember the Gemara there that said Simane Ophos are not Mina Torah. The Gemara said, what are you talking about? We learned it from Nesher. And the Gemara said, well, yeah, you learned it from a Brisa. You didn't learn it from Chumash. So here, we know that one of the Simane Kashrus is going to be that the Korkavan is Niklaf. And if it's not Niklaf, then it should be Tameh. The Hani, these 8 are in the middle. They're not at the ends of the clear cases of peelable or not peelable, but rather, hani korkavana niklaf, but only besakina. It can be peeled, but not with your bare hands. So how do we look at that? Do we say that at least it's peelable, even if it's with a knife? Or do we say, no, if you can't peel it with your hands, then it's not peelable? So that's why these cases are considered to be a suffix. Says the Gemara halfway down, Samach Beis Amud Beis. Hahi bar Abza. Dahava Bei Mar Shmuel. There was a bird that Bar Shmuel had. Delo hava kamiklaf korkivanim. He wasn't able to peel the korkivan, the gizzard. So what did he do? The osve b'shimsha. He put it out in the sun. The kevan de rafi iklaf. And once it softened, he was able to peel it. So what's your suffix? Put it in the sun. Let's see what happens. If it's going to be peelable after it softens, givaldik, the animal's kosher. And if it's not going to be able to do so, then okay, the animal's tameh. But your case of niklaf bisakin is all pre-sun heating. Says the Gemara, not correct. Hasam kirafi ikla biyada. The case in the Gemara where we gave this example of Mar Shmuel, that was a case that when the sun softened the gizzard, the korkivan, you were able to be iklaf biyada. But hacha, with the 8 that were besafik about afal gav derafi, even though you put it in the sun and it became softer, lo miklaf ela besakina. That's why we didn't know. We couldn't tell. It got stuck. The only way you could peel it was with a knife. I'm sorry, that's unclear. Does that mean that it's tameh or kosher? I'm not messing around. It's mamash a suffix deoraisa. Leave it alone. Leave it alone and don't eat it. That's why they were all besafik, all 8 of these birds. Next, Amar Abaye, Tarnagola de Agma. That's a male bird from the Agma, from the swamp. That's Chad Mishmonas Fekas Havu, the Hainu Mardu. So if you look back up at our list, number 6 was umarda. He calls it here marja with a vav. That is the bird, a male bird down by the swamp. Amar Rav Papa, Tarnagola de Agma Asira. He doesn't agree that it's a suffix. He holds that it's altogether Asr. Tarnagol ta de Agma, the female bird, is Sharia. V'simanech, how do you know that the male is Asr and the female is Muteres? What a beautiful textual proof. Amoni velo amonis. The Isser to marry in is for him, not for her. And therefore, it's Asr for the Tarnagola de Agma and Mutter for the Tarnagol ta de Agma.
Have one culture. I mean, yes, males are more aggressive, therefore maybe they're birds of prey and female, but that's odd within a species. Assuming Tarnagol, the Agam, and Tarnagol, the Agam are just two halves of the species. I don't know if that's true, but
Look at Tosfos, touching on your question.
yeah.
3 lines from the bottom. Tarnagolta da'agma sharia. Tarnagol, it's reversed actually, because the male was presented first in the Gemara. And Tarnagol da'agma asira. Ein lefare shanakeva muteris v'azachar aser. The kolayotze min atahor tahor. If the mother had 2 children, one's going to be aser, one's not going to be aser. Ella shnei minimhem hakriyim kach. Oh, beautiful. These are not the same species, David. Baruch shekivanta. Ubein bazeh hazachar v'hanakeva shabbat. So the males are one way and the females are, they're not the same species. Terrible wording. Yeah. I don't know. It's not. I mean, if you're asking, yeah. The male is one, so they're different species. Yeah. I didn't even pick up on that when I was learning. I'm like, oh yeah, no, one's asked whether even they like asked the question. Rosh Kivanta. Darash Meremar, Tarnagolta de Agma Asira, flipping the script, because remember, we said Amoni velo Amonis. We initially said that the Amonis, that the female Tarnagolta was Muteres. Meremar said the exact opposite. The Tarnagolta de Agma Asira, Chaz Yuha de Darsa ve'achla. Why? Because this is what we saw earlier. How does it eat? It sticks a talon in the animal and picks at it and doesn't pick up the whole bird at one time. The Hainu Gerusa, and if you look back up at the list of 8, this is the Gerusa that we saw a little bit above in the list of 8. Amar Rav Shavur, Amar Rav Shavur, is that his name? Yeah. Andarpita Shari, Piruz Andarpita Aser. So these different kinds of birds, one's allowed, one's not. The Simanech, how do we remember which one's Aser? Piruz Rishia. There apparently was a well-known Russia whose name was Piruz. Let's just be glad it wasn't one of our names. And they picked someone who was a really bad guy. Yes. Amar Rav Huna Bunya Shari Paro Aser. How do we know which one of these birds is mutter and which one is not? Says the Gemara, V'simanech Parva Amgusha. There was someone named Parva who was a sorcerer. And if you actually look up at the side here, you'll see this is a Gemara from Yom Adaf Lamed Hey. There was a room in the Beis HaMikdash, which was the room that was called Parva. It was one of the rooms, the Beis Parva, Lishkas HaParva. Yeah, so that was one of the rooms, ironically named after a sorcerer, but nevertheless, he wasn't a good guy. So in this case, it's going to be Asr. Amar Rav Papa, Mardu Zagid ve'achil, that's the name of a bird. Rashi says, Shem Of Echad, V'chein Kulam, Shem Ofos Heim. We don't translate these words, it's just the name. So Mardu Zagid ve'achil, Shari, Sagid ve'achil, Asir. Why is Sagid ve'achil Asir? How do we remember? The Simanech lo tishtachaveh le'el acher. Sagid means to bow down. The Sagid nakameh. This is what we say in Be'an Arachitz. The Sagid nakameh. I bow down in front of him. So the language of Sagid in Aramaic means to bow down. So if the name of the bird is Sagid ve'achil and it's Asir, v'simanech lo tishtachaveh le'el acher. Omar Shmuel, if there's a bird who's a bird type called Shasya Chamra, wonderful name to name your parrot, the one who drinks alcohol, Asira, that bird is not kosher. That we know that Kohanim are not allowed to do the avoda when they drink, nor are we allowed to daven when we are drunk. If you have a bird that is the wine dilution bird, again, it's the name of it, we're not supposed to translate the words, then Asira, that's not going to work. How do we remember this? That it's Asr, that Bas Mazga Oh, sorry, did that wrong. Shmuel says mazga chamra is asira. Bas mazga chamra. If the name of the word is bas mazga chamra, then sharia. The simanech. How do we remember this? Yafe koach ben mikoachav. That the language of bas, even though it doesn't mean child, because it's just the name of the bird, so that's what it is. But that's mutter. So the simanech yafe koach ben mikoachav. Amar Yehuda shkitzna. This type of bird, arichi shaki, long legs, visumke, and if it's red, sharia, visimanich, murzima. This is just a word that we don't know. Rashi says, murzima, third line down, shem ofshay, muchsak lahem bitar, vishokav aruchen, v'gufo edom. Again, we just are not familiar because it's not a word that we would use, not a reference. Today we would have said cardinal, right? It has whatever. It's not true because they don't have long legs, but they are red. We would have made a similar reference. Gutse v'sumke. However, if it's short-legged and red, asire. V'simanech nanus pasol. We know that when it comes to kohanim, if they are a nanus is a dwarf of some kind or a midget, someone that's very small, they're pasol for avoda. Ariche shake viroke. What if it did have tall legs, but it wasn't red, it was yellow, asire. V'simanech yiroken psulin. We know, like we've seen in this Masechta a good couple of times, that yellow is not a good color. Amar Rav Yehuda, the Torah speaks about the shalach. The pasuk reads, "Ve'es hakos, ve'es hashalach, ve'es hayanshuf." What was the shalach? Zeh hashola dagim min hayam. Top of Samach Gimel Amud Aleph, 5 lines down. This is a bird that grabs fish from the sea. What is the duchifas? The duchifas is actually a bird called the hoopoe. And there are pictures in the art scroll of this that it has these feathers on its head. When the feathers are standing up, they're beautiful. When they are lying down, they look like kind of tied down in a ponytail. Shehodo kafus. Its beauty is tied down. We have a brisa like this. Duchifas shehodo kafus. Bezeu shehebi shomer lebeis hamikdash. Great historical note is that the bird that brought the shamir to the Beis HaMikdash when it was being built, because we know that we could only use non-metal kalim to carve out the stones of the Beis HaMikdash, and the shamir did this. Huge discussions. How did that happen? Was its fecal matter acidic? Was it a nace? All these different... fine. So this is just a good stat. Good Yedias Klalius that the duchifas from the Torah brought the shamir to the Beis HaMikdash. Rav Yochanan ki hava chaz shalach, when he would see this bird, remember the shalach was the one that we said a couple of lines ago that was shola dagim min hayam, amar mishpatecha tahom rabba, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mishpat goes even to the depths of the water. Why? Because the fish that the shalach would grab by diving into the water, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu paskined on that fish had a din that it had to be no longer alive anymore. When he would see a namala, he would say, Amar tzidkasecha kehara re'el. Your righteousness is as great as mountains because you even care about the little guy. You even care about the namala. Amar amemar, likni ubitni. These are types of birds. Sharian. 2 other words that are very similar. Shakna'e uvatna'e. Well, then it depends. Makom shnagu le'echol ochlin. I guess it depends on minhag. We'll see why, because that doesn't make sense. Makom shnagu shelo le'echol ein ochlin. So says the Gemara, that makes no sense. If the shakanoi and the batnoi are not kosher, don't eat them. If they are kosher, then eat them. But atu bimin haga talia milsa? We have a family minhag, I eat treif. That's my family minhag now? Absolutely not. Is the animal kosher? Is the animal not kosher? Says the Gemara, absolutely it follows the minhag, but don't think about it in a simplistic way, because it's not. Below kasha. Ha be'asra deshchichi peres va'oznia. Here, when we say that the shaknoi and batnoi are not eaten, that's when they're exposed, when they're in a habitat, in a space in the world where there is paras ve'oznia, because in that case scenario, we're afraid of mixing up the birds. But when do we say you're allowed to eat the shaknoi and the batnoi? Be'asra de lo shchichi paras ve'oznia. Says the Gemara, next birds, Amar Abaye, kavoi v'kakavoi, asire, kakausa sharia. These animals are allowed. Then the Gemara says, "B'ma'arava malku ilave." In Ma'arava, they would give lashes on that. The karule takvasa, and they would read that the kakvasa was the same as the takvasa. So different discussions as to what is going on here. All right, we're going to stop right here at Tanu Rabbanan just because it's just about 9:30. And Emir Hashem, I will either record a shiur for tomorrow or Rabbi Handler will teach. I'll post in the chat as to which one it will be. Wishing you all a beautiful night and a meaningful fast tomorrow.